What is going on, Trash Talkers? We are back with another episode for you. Today we start off by recapping the wild endings to both LCS matchups and preview who will become your 2020 World Series champions. Next we move over to Fight Island, where we break down what was a wild UFC Fight Night as two top contenders were in action looking to earn their shot at a title. Plus we debate whether Vasili Lomachenko's loss was the biggest upset in boxing history. Finally, we go over all the major storylines from Week 6 of the NFL. All that and much more coming your way right now. Nick, it was a wild, wild week for sports. And not traditionally speaking, we had some baseball and obviously football, but UFC and boxing got a hell of a lot of headlines, huh?
Yeah, no, absolutely busy weekend. Two game sevens, like you said, and then moving over the UFC huge event right before leading up to UFC 254 this Saturday, and then this Vasili Lomachenko fight versus Teofimo Lopez, and it's a free fight. Everybody who has ESPN gets to watch it, which is fantastic. You don't have to spend
Right.
$80 on a boxing fight. So it was great weekend for sports, and I can't wait because there's some great boxing matches that are going to happen in the near future too that are on ESPN. So boxing's doing it right. Make things free. That's the way it should be.
I mean, for sure. I think, boxing has to compete a little bit with the growing, ever-changing UFC landscape that they're laying right now. So it'll be interesting to see how boxing develops. That partnership with ESPN will definitely help them go a long way as they have to compete with the UFC. But before we get into any of that, I do want to get started with what we have on our plate now, Major League Baseball's World Series. So the Rays beat the Astros in Game 7, which to me shouldn't have even gotten to a Game 7, but the Astros, being who they are, the talent on that roster, as much as we may hate to admit it, they are talented. That they forced a Game 7, and then the Rays were able to take it home. On the other side of the coin, the Dodgers beat the Braves, overcoming their deficit in that series. And now we have quite literally the mind effer of the year to say that the Tampa Bay Rays will be facing the Los Angeles Dodgers in the World Series. If I said that to you at the beginning of Major League Baseball season, you'd say I was absolutely nuts.
I still think it's absolutely crazy to think that the Tampa Bay Rays are in the World Series doesn't make it. It's almost like saying the Miami Heat are making it to the NBA Finals. It's 2020. Just add it to 2020. Things happen out of nowhere,
And that's going to be the theme throughout today's show too.
Yeah, it's wild times we're living in, and we're just going to have to get used to the unexpected. That's really what this is coming down to.
For sure. I want to just quickly touch base with the Rays Astros series. Obviously, the Astros were able to force a Game 7. What did you see from the Rays that got them over the hump and able to close out that series?
I think it's that they have great coaching, and I think that it's just a well-run organization in total. I think the players, it's not a lot of flashy names. You have some players that are starting to make names for themselves, but no one coming into this was a well-known or big paid player. So it's just it's coached well. Everybody works well together. I think it's just a great unit that is just strong-willed, and they're doing what they have to win games. They just don't have the big star. And I mean, I know this is starting to go around now, but you said this a couple weeks ago to me that Mookie Betts and Clayton Kershaw are making just as much as the entire Tampa Bay Rays are this season, which is mind-boggling. It's absolutely ridiculous. And these two teams are now facing off. So Moneyball is back in full effect, and I really hope that it works out. I hope that it works out for the Rays, and you know, I hope these LA Dodger fans go crying home once again.
Well, so speaking of the Dodgers, they were able to overcome their early shortcomings in the Braves series to force a game 7 and then come out on top. Now, if you didn't watch this game, it was an epic battle. The Dodgers were down early. They fought back tooth and nail, and then two major home runs ended up being the key for them to gain the victory. On top of reliever Julio Urias, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, was able to absolutely dominate the Braves. I mean, his stuff was just nasty in Game 7, and he did exactly what Dave Roberts expected him to do, and he shut down for the final 3 innings. He was their guy. So the Dodgers definitely have the requisite talent to get it done. It was just to me again, it was a little shocking that they ended up in that hole in the first place.
Well, I think that's what happens when you're just buying stars, and you're not coaching them, you're not working with them. And I think you're only going to get so far. I just don't see it. We saw it with the Clippers, and I'm not going to make too many more NBA references, but you can't just get all this talent and think that it's all going to work out together. And I know most of these pieces have been here for a few years now. Mookie is the exception. But I think that it's hard for players to work well together, and they're lucky that in baseball even though it's a team sport, it's as much an individual sport as well, because you all you need is consistent hitters, and then great defensive play by your players. So it's worked out, but I think they are just struggling. I don't know what it is. It could just be a curse. I think that it's bad luck on their part. This is their third trip right now to the World Series in the last 4 years. They haven't won a World Series since 1988. This is the Rays' second trip to the World Series, and they've only been an organization since 1998. So, this is the LA Dodgers have got a lot of pressure on them to deliver. They have failed twice so far in recent history, and I think there's a lot of pressure from the city of Los Angeles and from the rest of the nation looking at them saying, you are far superior on paper to the Tampa Bay Rays. There is no reason you should lose this series. So the Rays really have nothing to lose, and I think that could really benefit them, and I think that's really benefited them throughout this playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, they're making their Cinderella story run, but I will say that most LA Dodger fans, and I will add myself into their company for this statement, believe that they technically only lost one of those World Series because the other one was the Astros cheating their way to victory.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. The Dodgers would have lost anyway because they're just a terrible organization.
Okay, I mean, we don't need to take jabs at the organization. They have the requisite talent to be there. They've shown that consistently, and they have it now to get over the hump by adding quite literally the second best player in baseball in Mookie Betts. So when you take on a player like that, pay him the mass amount of money over the span of years that they did, they are saying this is the time where we are going to win it all. We have been there. We have been too close to walk away now. We have to go all in. And I think you're seeing from the Magic Johnson led financial group that they have that this is the time that they're going to compete for that championship. And I believe, just to preview the series, I believe that the Dodgers will come out on top. I believe the Dodgers will win this in 6 games. And I just believe that at a certain point, Clayton Kershaw is going to become himself. He's not going to continue with the same struggles that he's had throughout the playoffs. And this lineup is going to be able to take apart the Tampa Bay Rays, quote unquote rotation. But there's just no person that I can point to on the Rays and say that guy can at least shut them down for one game. I don't think Blake Snell is that guy. I don't think they have any of those guys that can do that.
When I look at what the Tampa Bay Rays just did against the Houston Astros, I view the Astros lineup and the Dodgers lineup relatively similar. I don't think there's a big discrepancy, and I think the biggest change would be in the pitching. I think that the Dodgers have a lot more depth. So that's going to be the biggest thing for the Rays to really overcome is they're going to have to be able to stand up to these pitchers and put up runs consistently. I mean, you saw the Braves putting up 4 or 5 runs, sometimes 10 runs to get the job done. And they're going to have to do a great job of controlling this because a lot of the batters on the Dodgers are very consistent hitters. So you're going to have to try to maintain them. And I think they've proven they can do that because of what they did against the Astros and all their consistent hitters. They weren't stopping them every time, but they did enough to get the job done. And that's really the Rays, what they're really striding to do. Bend but don't break, and they've got to really get ahead in this series if they want a chance at winning. So you took the Dodgers to win in this series. I can't do that. I can't do that. That's never gonna happen. I don't care if this is a sweep. I would never admit that the Dodgers have a chance. I'm gonna take the Tampa Bay Rays and I'm gonna take them in 7. I'm gonna say this though. If the Tampa Bay Rays don't win the first 2 games of the series, then it's going to be extremely tough for them to come back. This is a team that needs to have the edge. They need to put the Dodgers in a bad spot where their backs are up against the wall and they're either going to break or they're going to persevere. And I think that's the only advantage that they could have in the series because the players aren't there. Yeah, you have guys like Randy Arozarena and Kiermaier and that you've got these guys who have been consistent and really stepping up lately, but I think that it's only
the World Series is a different stage. It's a completely different stage, and it's the limelight. These guys have flown under the radar for such a long time. Now they are in the spotlight. They are here. The world is watching. Are you going to rise to the occasion, or are you going to fold under the pressure? One of my favorite sayings in life, but in sports specifically, is that pressure creates 2 things: burst pipes and diamonds. Which one are you going to become? And I think that's where the Rays have to really figure it out right now.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, and they have done a lot in the playoffs, and they have surprised a lot of people by beating the Yankees and beating the Astros. There's no reason they can't beat the Dodgers. I really think that they have an opportunity to do it, but I think they're going to have to get out to an early lead in the series if they want to win it all.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that sentiment. I believe that the Rays need every advantage possible. And with them not being in Tampa, with it being a neutral ground series, I believe that it's going to take a toll on them more than it will the Dodgers, because the Dodgers, again, they have Mookie Betts, who's been there and won it before. They have Clayton Kershaw, who is one of the, if not the best pitchers in baseball. They have the requisite talent to just be able to lean back and they can win anywhere. And they've shown that before. That's why they're such a threat in the regular season and throughout the postseason. Everybody's favorite going into the season as well. But there's a lot to learn here. I'm really excited about this World Series. I didn't think I would be, especially because I expected the Yankees to be here. But now that the Rays are here, I'm all in. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, should be fun.
Yeah, for sure. I want to change it up a little bit. I want to go over to the UAE. I want to check out Fight Island, and I want to talk about what we witnessed on Saturday night, UFC's Fight Night. Not every, yeah, it was a great time. For that to be a free event, just like you talked about with boxing, it was definitely worth the entertainment for sure.
Oh, for sure. I mean, to think that even the fights that have been before this, what Dana White has been doing, and I'm going to keep preaching it because I absolutely love Dana White and what the UFC has done during this pandemic. they have done a better job than any other sport or organization, and it's really showing that they are trying their hardest to pump out as much great content as possible. And as a fan, I get to sit back, relax, and enjoy myself. And with this night of fights, we had two special fights. We had Jessica Andrade and moving up in weight class and taking on Caitlin Chikagian, who's the #1 flyweight contender. And this was going to decide who faces Valentina Shevchenko next. And then the main event, Brian Ortega makes his 2-year return after taking a step back, and then returning against the Korean Zombie, who has been great. He is pretty much the reason that I started to watch the UFC. You know, he was one of the first fights I've ever seen, and you know, I love watching these guys fight. I think and to know that this whoever won this was then going to go face Alexander Volkanovski. You know, just the stakes and the caliber of fighter that we were getting in each of these fights from both sides it was great to see, because these are fights you only can see in pay-per-view events usually. But that's where the UFC is being different, and they're saying, nope, we're going to make this event that everybody can see, that's going to get more people tuned in and get them to start paying more attention to the UFC. So.
And it absolutely did. It did exactly what Dana White was looking for, because their ratings were absolutely through the roof on Saturday night, beating out some of the major things that were happening on television and on cable. It definitely was a positive sign for the UFC as a whole. But I want to start off with the first fight that you talked about, Jessica Andrade and Caitlin
Chikagian.
Yes, I mess up her name every single time. Jessica Andrade and Caitlin Chikagian. This was quite an interesting fight. Now, personally, I thought Jessica Andrade had this from the get-go. I thought that she was the better fighter going into this, and the only thing that made me hesitate just a little bit is that Caitlin Chikagian is a very technical fighter. She takes her strikes in stride. She makes sure that she has, everything lines up perfectly, and then she strikes at the perfect time. Where Jessica Andrade, she's just, she's an animal. She just attacks and she doesn't let up, and that's exactly what we saw with her second round TKO. She went after the legs, then she went after the body, then she kept switching back and forth wherever the opening ended up, and then she really, when you saw the first wince of major pain from Caitlin Chikagian, you knew that she was going to just absolutely obliterate the body and the abdomen specifically, until she got Caitlin down onto the ground, and then that's when she finished off the fight. But watching that, I felt that pain. I felt it, like, just watching it, I was like, oh my God, that is absolutely terrible, that what she's going through right now. But I do want to hear from a more technical standpoint what you thought of it as well.
Well, what I was really interested to see in this fight was how Jessica Andrade was going to handle the increased weight, how she was going to handle a new weight class, and how was she going to handle a female fighter like Caitlin, who was 8 inches taller than her. How is she going to be able to handle that reach and that height difference? She handled it beautifully. I couldn't have imagined that fight going better for Jessica Andrade. And like you said, it's the tenacity and the fury that she fights with. Caitlin was sitting back in a lot of that fight and waiting for things to come to her, waiting to figure out.
And that's the type of fighter she is, though, that,
Right.
So I think that's perfect for Andrade to realize, like, this is the type of fighter I want to go at first in this weight class before I get a real taste of what's going to happen.
Right. And one thing with Jessica is she's been there. She's been a champ. She's been in this game for so long. She knows how to spot weaknesses and how to take advantage of them. And her game is so strong all around that it doesn't matter where it's taking place, whether it's striking or on the ground. She's going to dominate. And I don't think Caitlin was ready for the power and the speed at which Jessica was going to fight with. When she took that first shot, she realized what she got herself into, because she was literally getting pushed back by punches from this 5'1.5" female fighter, just absolutely obliterating her with each punch and each hit. and then picked her up, threw her down the ground, and started ground and pounding her because she's she's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that's what Jessica does. She was tough for Rose Namajunas twice. She was the champ in the strawweight division. She's been there. She knows how to fight people at the highest of caliber, and I think Caitlin just was underprepared going to this, and Jessica's veteran, her veteran status and her just legacy in the UFC really carried through, and I think she really knew what she was doing, and this is going to match up great with Valentina Shevchenko, who is able to just calibrate perfectly and knows how to dissect you and knows where to hit you. So I think this is going to be a great matchup. How Valentina is going to be able to handle the speed and strength of a female fighter like Jessica Andrade, and how Jessica Andrade is going to be able to handle the counterattack that Valentina Shevchenko is going to throw at her. It's going to be very, very interesting and fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I think Shevchenko is going to take plenty of time to review the footage from her previous fights, but specifically this fight. And if I'm her, if I'm in her coaching circle, I'm saying you need to be the aggressor, because if you can get her off of her game, which is her being the aggressor, Andrade, speaking of Andrade, then I think you have an actual legitimate shot to overpower her, especially with again, we're talking about somebody who has a deficit in the size in this division. She's going to struggle if she's not the aggressor, if she's not the one who is absolutely pushing people back into a corner and dictating the terms in which they're fighting. So I think Valentina Shevchenko has plenty on her plate to train for. But she definitely should have a solid game plan moving forward.
Most definitely. Valentina Shevchenko is one of the hardest working female fighters there are, and she is going to dissect everything that Jessica Andrade has done. She's going to look at what Rose did. I mean, if we go back to what the last two fights that Jessica had, or last three fights, I should say, she fought Rose twice in that time. She beat her the first time, but the entire time Rose was winning that fight. It was when she dropped her on her head and ended in a knockout. That's the only reason she won that fight. But if it had gone to decision, Jessica would have lost that fight. And so you're going to look at what Rose did the first and second time on how to defeat Jessica Andrade, and then look at all of her fights to see where she's improved in her game, where there are still weaknesses. I think Valentina's going to do a great job, and she is just masterful when it comes to picking apart her opponents. So I think it's still going to be an extreme challenge for Jessica. And now with the balance in height, I think you're going to face a much different fighter in Valentina Shevchenko, because she's going to have similar power to Jessica Andrade. It's not going to be like Caitlin, who is a lot leaner because she's so much taller. It's going to be more compact and more powerful, and it's going to be similar strength on each side. So Jessica's going to have to figure out how to handle somebody that matches up like herself. She's going to have to find a replica of herself to fight against, or to practice against at least. It'll be interesting to see how they match up, or how they practice and get ready for this fight. And we're probably not going to see this until February or March of next year. So there's still some time. They've got plenty of time to get ready for this. And by then, they should be ready for this. They should be on their game plan. And very looking forward to that fight.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a lot to be excited for, not just in this fight, but in the UFC in general, which led us to the I guess the number one fight of the evening, the quite literally one of the best fights that I've seen all year, I think, and there's been a ton of great fights throughout this year. But Brian Ortega beating the Korean Zombie by unanimous decision. Just watching this fight, watching Brian Ortega come back from his 2 years off and being able to just have an answer for absolutely everything that the Korean Zombie was doing. I think there's something that definitely needs to be said for his ability to basically, he did train for this, but to walk off the street and not being touched in a competitive manner in over 2 years, all the props to him. I'm glad he was able to come back. I'm glad he was able to do this and really, show that he is somebody that needs to be taken seriously now.
Oh, for sure. And Brian has been somebody who's been taken seriously, but he had some mix-ups. He had to change camps, and then he got back to work. And this was great opportunity because as somebody who's still ranked in the top 5 after a 2-year sabbatical, this is a great matchup. Korean Zombie has been tearing it up in the featherweight division. I think in his win streak, he's had 2 knockouts in less than a minute. This guy has been absolutely killing it, and this was going to decide who faces Volkanovski next. And Ortega showed that his change of camp really helped him improve on his game. And as great as Korean Zombie is, he looked lost in this fight. He just got taken advantage of. His game plan got exposed right away, and Brian Ortega just started teeing off. And I don't know how Korean Zombie stayed in this because he was getting hit with some bombs in this fight, and he was stumbling left and right. I'm surprised the ref didn't step in at some point, but I'm glad he didn't because it resulted in a great fight all around. And these guys, I hope they match up again in the future because it was a really fun fight to see.
Yeah, for sure. I was really happy about this fight. And now, obviously, Brian Ortega coming back from his sabbatical. His second fight is now facing Alexander Volkanovski for the featherweight title. So he's got, he faces Korean Zombie, and then he's got Volkanovski right after. I mean, you can't ask for much more of a welcoming party back into the UFC. But one thing that really stood out to me, and I mentioned it briefly already, but his ability to answer everything that Korean Zombie was doing. And one moment in my brain stands out specifically. Korean Zombie tried to strike him, and he turns around and gives a spinning back elbow right to the head of Korean Zombie. And that, to me, I was like, oh my God, this man, he is anticipating every single thing that Korean Zombie's doing. And I don't know necessarily if he was just that readable as a fighter, Korean Zombie was, or if it was just that Brian Ortega, his ability to just change and adapt on the fly allowed him to make such impressive moves. But either way, I have to take my hat off for him because what I was able to see and what he was able to do really, really impressed me. And for somebody who didn't know much about him going into the weekend, I was thoroughly impressed and really excited for what I'm about to see in the next 5 or 6 months whenever he gets that title shot.
Yeah, I think one thing with Brian, he's extremely smart, and when you're as a great fighter, you're going to look at Korean Zombie's tape and what he's done in the past and know his tendencies. Now, if you turn your back, he might want to crash in, so you're going to know, all right, my back's turned. I better if I throw this spinning back elbow, he's probably going to be right behind me and catch it. So that's just something you're going to learn by studying him and learning that. Or, sometimes you see fighters just throw it when their back is turned because they have a feeling that their opponent might be crashing in on them and trying to take their back. So it could just have been, by sheer luck, or it could have been, very tactical and game planned that way. But nonetheless, it worked out great. And that was one of the big shots that Korean Zombie took that rattled him on top of a bunch of other shots. But Ortega just manhandled him throughout this fight, and I believe he won every round. I don't think Korean Zombie took any of the rounds in that fight. So Brian Ortega, like you said, not many people, if they've just started tuning in, are going to know what this guy is about, but they're going to learn quickly because he is a true competitor and real competition against Volkanovski.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely going to be interesting to watch. I'm excited for that fight as well. Um, it'll be very interesting if the Andrade Shevchenko fight happens on the same card as the Ortega and Volkanovski fight, because they matched up now and they could possibly match up in the future.
All depends on contracts and what Dana can put together.
For sure. But before we head off the UFC topic, we do have another title fight right around the corner. and that would be this Saturday. We have Khabib and Justin Gaethje facing off for the lightweight title. This is uh, a very anticipated matchup. This is Khabib's first matchup after losing his father, but also since the quarantine has happened, he hasn't been able to make it out of
Dagestan.
out of or just into wherever the UFC was having a fight at that time. So this is his first showing since all of this has started. I don't know if you saw, but he did make an appearance earlier
Yeah,
on Tuesday with.
He had been coaching some corners the last couple weeks.
Yes, but I'm speaking more specifically. He spoke with Stephen A. and Max Kellerman on Tuesday about his fight, and I have to, before we get into the actual fight, Stephen A. addressed the elephant in the room and said, Khabib, it's rumored that you don't want to fight Conor McGregor at this point in time because you don't want to give him the platform. You don't want to give him the spotlight for this fight because you hate him that much. And to quote Khabib, he goes, I don't want to talk about this shit right now. And to me, that showed me he's angry. He's angry about a lot of things, and I think this is going to translate not only into this fight, but into his future fights. But specifically talking about this Gaethje fight, I'd be very shocked if Gaethje comes out on top here. I think Khabib has a lot of pent-up aggression, and he's going to absolutely become a manimal. And he'll be the same guy that we saw when he beat Conor McGregor the first time, when he's dominated this division. But I think he's going to reclaim his spot at the top.
Well, I can definitely see where Khabib would be upset. I mean, if we go back to what Conor said earlier this year when we found out Khabib's father was sick, that's when Conor went and tweeted out that, oh, he's probably faking it. And then we found out a couple days later he passed away. So I can't imagine. Khabib loved his father more than anyone in the world. He idolized him. That was his coach. And he grew up in this sport. And I can't imagine what he felt towards Conor when he saw what he said toward his ill father at the time. And, I can understand the frustration not wanting to fight him again, but it might be inevitable if he does win this fight, because in January we're getting Conor versus Dustin Poirier, and this will probably set up the number one contender for the lightweight belt, except I don't think it's going to play out that way. I don't believe Khabib is going to win this fight. I love Justin Gaethje. If I actually just rewatched him versus Tony Ferguson earlier today, just to get myself psyched up again for what he's all about. And this is a guy that keeps honing in on his craft and would have more wins in the UFC if he just didn't get so arrogant and cocky throughout the fight. He just got very complacent, as he said, and he lost because he wasn't reading his opponent. He was having too much fun and just getting away from the game plan. And that's why his coach, Trevor Whitman, has been working with him relentlessly, working to improve his craft and every part of his game. And they're going to need that going into this fight, because Khabib is going to try to take down Justin Gaethje. The last thing he wants to do is eat one of those punches that Gaethje is bound to throw at him. And it's going to be interesting to see how Khabib handles those punches when they land, because it was Tony Ferguson, the most iron chin in the UFC, was stumbling taking some of those shots and ended up getting lost by TKO because he just couldn't take anymore. And if Khabib still tries to take him down on the ground, he's probably going to have success on him, but he's also dealing with a guy who is a collegiate wrestler who has, who's been working in BJJ for such a long time. And I think that's going to be the main focus of Justin Gaethje's camp, is figuring out the ground game, making sure that he is able to handle what Khabib is going to throw at him, and also take down defense, see how he can stop Khabib from taking him down. So if he's able to keep this fight on their feet, I think this fight is going to be an easy win for Gaethje. But if it's on the ground, it could be a toss-up because a lot of people don't want to test Gaethje on the ground. He has too much of a strong background, and they'd rather fight him on the feet. So you're gonna struggle with Gaethje, excuse me, no matter what, because he is such a strong, well-rounded fighter. But then you can't count out the 28-0 Khabib Nurmagomedov, who has obliterated every opponent put in front of him. So it'll be a great fight. It'll be a great fight. But I think Justin Gaethje has what it takes, and I think he's going to end the streak of Khabib.
I think Justin Gaethje absolutely has what it takes, and I don't want to take a single thing away from him. I think he has proven time and time again that he deserves to be the guy at the top, and he has what it takes to get there. But Khabib is a different animal. I'm telling you, this man is angry. He's hungry. And the only thing in his way right now is Justin Gaethje. And he is going to do absolutely everything in his power to get this man to the ground and test out that ability to grapple with him down there. Because I believe that Khabib is not going to be stopped right now. This is a man on a mission, and you have to take away. You can talk about all the technical stuff and everything about what Justin Gaethje's worked on and everything like that. Khabib has had plenty of time off to continue to work, and obviously he took a little break with the passing of his father. But he's well focused. He's ready to go. He is absolutely ready to dominate. And if you take a look at any of Khabib's fights, just like you took a look at Justin Gaethje's fight, you're going to see that this guy absolutely dominates his competition. He has great coaching and game plans going into each matchup, and he's just his skill set is by far and away one of the best that I've ever seen, and could possibly become the best that I've ever seen.
It's possible that he is fine. I think I'll be interested to see how the loss of his father, not having him in his corner, or if he's thinking about him too much, trying to win this for him, how much that plays a factor. How is he going to handle that pressure? Because there is added pressure for him to win this fight, the first fight after his father has passed. It's a lot to put on yourself, and how is that going to affect his game plan? How is that going to affect him when he's in a certain situation that he probably shouldn't be too aggressive, and then he becomes more aggressive to try to get a finish, and it could end up spiraling out of control for him. It could, and he can end up on the wrong side of things really quickly. You got to be careful with Justin Gaethje, because he is smart enough, and his coaches are smart enough to figure out a well strategized game plan to beat Khabib. And you have to think, there's no crowd. Where is Khabib getting the motivation from? The adrenaline rush. I mean, we've already seen Justin Gaethje on Fight Island in these conditions, and he thrived in them. He didn't need a crowd to keep the adrenaline going. He just loves the sport. I've never seen somebody smile through a fight before like Justin Gaethje does, because he's built for the sport.
I understand this, but the fact remains is that you're not giving Khabib enough credit. I'm
giving him plenty of credit. I think his record speaks for itself, and the people he has beaten in his career. But
but you're also inflating Gaethje at the same time.
Don't underestimate Justin Gaethje.
Nobody's underestimating him.
Competition that Khabib has ever faced. And I think people are
quite possible that is the case, but this is also the hardest competition that Justin Gaethje's ever faced.
Well, of course, I think that goes without saying, but
right,
you can't just look at this like this is Conor McGregor against Khabib, or this is Dustin Poirier against Khabib. Justin's going to learn from that, and he's going to figure out a game plan. If he can stop that double leg takedown, or stop those quick maneuvers by Khabib to get him against the fence and try to wear him down. I think that's going to be the key game plan, is to stop against that, and then work your strategy. Try to move around in that cage. You have the 30-foot ring. You're not working in the small 25-foot ring. So you'll have more room to move around and stay on your feet. So this ring definitely has an advantage for Gaethje, and I think he's going to utilize that to his advantage.
It'll be very interesting to see for sure. Um, before we get off of it, just quickly, what do you see the outcome being? You said Gaethje's going to win. How do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, I'll take Gaethje. I think it's gonna be TKO. I think that's gonna have to be how he wins this fight. I'd say third. I'll probably say third round TKO.
Okay. Um, I believe that this might end up going to a decision, and if that's the case, I think I think Khabib's going to take it. Even though I'm the one that says that you have to do more than your opponent to get the decision in a title fight. I believe Khabib's going to be able to do just that. I think he's going to get a unanimous decision to reclaim the title.
Yeah, I mean it's a wait and see game, but we're only a few days away, so I'm
No, for
hyped
sure,
about
and I'm very
it.
excited, and we're gonna be watching this on Saturday together, and be very interesting to watch for sure.
Oh, most definitely.
All right, so let's move away from the UFC, but stay with the fighting mantra and continue over to boxing. Now, for those of you who don't know or haven't followed boxing, Lomachenko had 3 belts for boxing titles. He put all 3 belts on the line in an effort to be the first person in boxing history to unify the lightweight belts versus Teofimo Lopez. Now, that is a bold strategy because you are basically saying it is all or nothing. And Vasili Lomachenko walked out with nothing. Teofimo made a name for himself. He beat Lomachenko um, in incredible fight. But most importantly, Lopez now holds all 4 belts and has unified them in that respect. Nick, please tell us what you thought of this fight, what happened, and how did Vasily Lomachenko walk out with no hardware?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a tough decision when a fighter has to decide whether he's going to risk it all. He has 3 of the 4 belts in the weight class, and he's saying, "All right, I'll do whatever it takes to unify or not unify, but to collect all these belts. I want to have all the hardware in the lightweight division." And that meant he's going to have to face Teofimo Lopez, a guy who's 9 years younger than him, who just won the belt earlier this year. He's gonna have to face him and risk it all for 1 belt. So it's a huge task, and then you have the pressure of it being Vasily Lomachenko, one of the biggest boxers in today's age. Lomachenko has been killing everybody. He's been destroying people. People have been quitting on their stool because they can't take him anymore. It's just
Right.
too much. And this reminded me a lot of what happened to Daniel Cormier in his final fight of his career, where he had a game plan going into it, and then he got punched in the mouth, and then it was
And then it's all over from there.
yeah, his game plan got destroyed. And what I don't think Vasily understood about Teofimo is a guy who's that much younger than him is going to be a lot quicker, and he's going to be a lot stronger throughout the fight because it's just a pure age difference. You're talking 32 versus 23. That is huge. And when you saw the approach from Vasily, he was taking it slow. He wanted to be calibrated and figure out the tendencies of Teofimo and figure out how to fight against him. And that's when Teofimo took advantage. He probably knew going in that that's what Vasily was going to do, and he was going to strike quickly and just start earning points right away. And that's when things started to go wrong. You get into it, and then six rounds in, it's 6-0 for Teofimo, and now Vasily's backup is up against the wall. And surprisingly, what I heard after the fight, Vasili was extremely surprised that he lost this fight. He thought he won it unanimously, which was very surprising. He thought he won every round. And I was surprised to hear that because he wasn't doing
Was he watching
anything.
the same fight that
Yeah,
we all watched?
I don't know what was going through his mind or what his coaches weren't telling him.
He didn't throw a punch for the first 6 rounds.
Yeah, he just stood there and he was taking it. But you saw him start to come on stronger in the final 6 rounds. But it wasn't enough. Teofimo used that young energy he has to continue and keep that pace of the fight that he had through the first 6 rounds and just kept putting it on Vasili. And that's why he ended up losing by unanimous decision. It's just Teofimo approached it perfectly. Don't try to knock him out. Just try to gather points. And that's the way you have to do it in boxing. It's all about points. And that's why he is now being, a lot of people want to consider him the next Roy Jones Jr. because he is just climbing through, or climbing up the ranks extremely quickly. And Vasili just made Teofimo one of the biggest names in all of boxing because of this fight.
Yeah, so I mean, I've heard, Teofimo Lopez is widely considered a top boxer at this point. What he showed against Lomachenko is one of the greatest upsets in sports history. But is it the biggest upset in boxing history? And I think that's where we're going to have our debate right now. Nick, I'll let you go first.
It's an interesting one because there weren't a lot of people counting on Teofimo to do much. A guy who's young, he's not as experienced as Vasili. He hasn't faced competition like Vasili. There were a lot of people that just didn't expect this, but then as the fight got closer, the tide started to shift. People started to think that maybe Vasili doesn't have it. Maybe this isn't going to be his fight. And when we look at other upsets, and I think the biggest upset that has ever happened in boxing was when Buster Douglas beat Mike Tyson. Going into that fight, Mike Tyson was unstoppable. There was nobody in the world that was going to touch this guy. And then he gets knocked out. And that shocked everybody. This didn't shock everybody. So I think, no, this wasn't the biggest upset ever in boxing, but it was a huge upset. So I think that it's going to be tough to top that Buster Douglas victory over Mike Tyson as the biggest upset ever in boxing.
Yeah, I think we agree there. I wasn't sure what your take on this was going to be, but I agree. I think Buster Douglas over Mike Tyson has to be the number one upset in boxing history. But I will say this is almost neck and neck with it, because going into this, if you asked anybody who was a casual boxing fan who Teofimo Lopez is, they probably wouldn't be able to tell you. Even though he deserves the credit that, he deserves more credit than that, they probably couldn't have told you. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that he, before this, was kind of unproven, even though he had just won one belt earlier this year, but he's also super young. And I think when you're going against somebody as decorated and as experienced as Vasili Lomachenko, it's really, nobody else really gets a fair shake. And Teofimo Lopez, utilizing what he has in his innate ability as a younger person, as somebody who can sustain energy for longer bouts of time, I think he was able to come up with the perfect game plan, like you talked about, and he was able to strike early, strike often, and he was able to win the first 6 rounds, and from there all he had to do was win a couple more, and that's it, unanimous decision, he wins. It also helped him that I don't understand why Lomachenko didn't throw a single, real punch since in the first 6 rounds. It didn't really make sense to me watching this, or just taking this all in. But I just, for the sake of the question, I do believe this is very close to that Buster Douglas Mike Tyson fight.
Yeah, and I just want to add to what you're saying. Tiafimo is not a big name. I barely knew who he was going into this fight. I mean, the victory he had where he got the belt. It wasn't even the main event. He won the belt as somebody who was middle of the card, and that's the height at which he was in his career when he obtained the belt. He just was a blip on the radar, and everybody just overlooked him. Said, "Okay, whatever." But everybody was so focused on Vasili, and I think it's possibly the pressure. Tiafimo, what did he have to lose? He's 23. He's young. He could bounce back from this. Vasili's not getting any younger.
Right.
So this was one of his last chances to unify the belts. And it was all pressure on him. And that's kind of been the baseline going through everything. Every situation, whether it's baseball or UFC or boxing, if you don't have the pressure on you, you're going to perform much better. So I think that Teofimo, that's why a lot of the tide started to turn, because everybody realized what Vasili had done, the situation he had placed himself in, and there was a lot riding on this for him, and not much for Teofimo. So that's when people started to think, oh, this is going to probably not go in Vasili's way.
Yeah. No, for sure. And for you to tell me that, you're hearing that Vasili Lomachenko thought that he had won all of the rounds, including the first 6, it boggles my mind. Just because Teofimo, again, came out swinging. He came out aggressive. He landed some great hits. He definitely outscored Lomachenko in every objective person's eyes. And, it just, you have to give him credit. You have to give credit to his camp. We all know who Teofimo Lopez is now, and I guarantee most people are not going to continue to sleep on him. Those who are probably the ones who, probably thought that Lomachenko didn't lose one of those rounds either. But nonetheless, it was a great fight. It's absolutely something that if you're relatively into boxing, or if you're into fighting sports and maybe want to check out boxing, definitely check out Teofimo Lopez. Definitely check out Vasili Lomachenko. I'm sure there will be some sort of either rematch, or there will be some sort of title fight in the relatively near future, as far as these belts are concerned. So definitely keep on looking for those sorts of things as well. All right, so we have the World Series, UFC Fight Night, and major upset in boxing, right? What else is there? Oh, that's right, just this little thing called the NFL, right? So there was quite a few things that kind of made you scratch your head this week in the NFL, and we'll get into a couple of them. So the first one was that the Pittsburgh Steelers absolutely manhandled the Cleveland Browns. They made Baker Mayfield look like he had no idea what the quarterback position was. And after some point in the third quarter, he took a major shot to his back and was pulled from the game for Case Keenum. Now, this comes after just a couple weeks ago when it seemed like they had turned a corner. They were able to run the ball as well as they wanted to. They were able to pass the ball wherever they wanted to. OBJ was definitely, he was one of the prime targets. They were utilizing him aggressively and correctly. Jarvis Landry got some great looks, and then all of a sudden it seems like they went away from everything that they had been doing. I guess it begs the question, is this a Baker Mayfield issue, or is this just not is this not it for Kevin Stefanski?
I think the Baker experiment is coming to an end. I think he's been in the league now for 4 years now, right? He 3 or 4.
Yeah.
He's been with 2 head coaches or 3 head coaches, I should say. And and he's now with his best head coach in Kevin Stefanski, and it's clearly not working. He's not progressing at all. And you would think going from Freddie Kitchens to Kevin Stefanski would be a big jump for Baker Mayfield, and it has not
on
been.
top of the acquisitions and additions that they made to help him along the way.
Right.
Again, don't forget they added the top tight end in free agency in
Austin Hooper.
Austin Hooper. They got their right tackle
Jack
from the
Conklin.
Tennessee Titans, right, Jack Conklin. They still have Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., David Njoku. They still have, I mean, relatively speaking, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. Hell, Dearness Johnson even showed up for them a couple of times. I mean, they have the requisite pieces around him. Like, what? I don't know what else he could ask for, because he is put in a prime position to win, and it's just not happening.
Yeah, I mean, he has one of the strongest offensive lines and one of the best running backs in the game. And when Nick Chubb is healthy, he has two of the best running backs in the game to help him out. And then he has all these receiving targets that every other quarterback in the league would love to have. He's just not doing anything. He sits in the pocket. He doesn't make reads. He doesn't know what he's doing. He just freezes in the moment, and then when the pressure gets to him, he throws the ball. It gets tipped and then intercepted, or he just throws it straight to the defense. He is flustered and doesn't really understand what to do. And when you saw Case Keenum going for him, you saw the 3-step drop back and then the throw right away. He makes his reads 1, 2, throw, or tuck it and run or throw away. Go through your read progression. Don't freeze in the moment. He clearly isn't handling the pressure of being an NFL starting quarterback. I don't even know if he can make it as a backup. Like, is he better than Johnny Manziel? Like,
I think he's better than Johnny Manziel. You got to give him credit where credit is.
The question has to be asked, because
I don't think so.
What is the difference between the two? What have they done different in their careers? The fact that, I mean, besides the fact that Baker's been in the league a little bit longer, the output has been roughly the same, and they've gotten to where they are because their defensive front is strong. They have great running backs. They have great receiving weapons that can do a lot with very little. Baker Mayfield is kind of along for the ride, and I think he was hoping that Kevin Stefanski was going to utilize more of this run-heavy offense, but without Nick Chubb there, he really can't. So now Baker has to throw more.
And so if you take any of the quarterbacks that were taken after Baker Mayfield, in my opinion, they would be much more successful than Baker Mayfield.
I mean, if we go back to draft night, leading up
and
to
that includes Josh Rosen, by the way.
I mean, true. Go back to draft night. Leading up to it, everybody was like, oh my God, Sam Darnold is going to go number 1. And at the last second, everybody got word that Baker Mayfield was looking to be the guy. And then they drafted Baker Mayfield. Can you imagine what Sam Darnold could do with this team? Can you imagine what Baker Mayfield would be looking like on the New York Jets right now?
Could you imagine what Josh Allen or even Lamar Jackson would look like on this team? I mean, yeah. they had the class to pick from, and they chose Baker Mayfield, who clearly has not showed up. The only worst pick might have been Josh Rosen at that point in time, and that has still yet to be seen, because in my opinion, Rosen has never been given a fair shake, whether he was with Arizona or Miami. He has never been given a real opportunity to succeed.
I think Baker has one more game. If he has another bad game, I think he has to be benched. I think because your team is too good right now. There's too many weapons there for you to just throw the season. You can compete. I think you can bounce back from this game against Pittsburgh. I believe that you're a better team than Baltimore. There are 7 spots available to make the playoffs. You can, like, the Browns can do it. They can get there, and they can figure it out once they get there, but they can't just start getting flustered. They can't rely on Baker if he's not the guy. I think
it should also be noted that Case Keenum isn't a scrub, right? Even though he's the backup quarterback, Case Keenum, he showed you what he could do in Minnesota, and he played lights out there. So if he comes in and takes over this job, it is not with outside of the realm of possibility that Baker Mayfield loses his job and ends up on either a trading block or possibly not being re-signed or getting cut. I mean, we've seen crazier things happen. I just don't think the production has been there. Although I do believe he is much better than Johnny Manziel, so I'm not going to put that on him. I do believe in it, that though, if he does not start to play to the potential that they saw in him, they can't keep changing head coaches. They can't keep investing more resources into this offense. I really don't know what else they can physically do to prop him up to a position. Like, I feel like if you took almost any other quarterback in the league, not just from his draft class, but in the league, they would be thriving in this offense.
I mean,
thriving.
Who would you rather have, Baker or Mitch Trubisky?
Right now, Mitchell Trubisky.
Really?
Yeah, it's that bad.
Would you rather have
Mitchell Trubisky makes the sure throws. Mitchell Trubisky never had an Odell Beckham Jr. or a Jarvis Landry. He had Allen Robinson. Yeah, he had Allen Robinson. That's it. But when you have the weapons that this guy has, what running game did Mitchell Trubisky ever had? Never. Instead of that running game, you get Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb. I mean, hello, yes. You get a great offensive line. Plus, in David Njoku and Austin Hooper at tight end. I mean, again, what else can you ask for as a quarterback besides the team to invest in every weapon around you? At some point, you have to point the finger and say, you're just not up for the task.
All right. Now, the Jets clearly are not playing the season. Obviously, they're keeping Gase around so they are guaranteed to go 0-16.
Who?
Sam Darnold is not in their future. Why don't the Browns make the trade? Why don't they go after Sam Darnold, who we know has shown flashes of what he can do when he has talent around him and when he has an offensive line? Why not go after that guy? The guy you should have gotten in the first place. Why not go get him now while you can?
And do what? I mean, what's the trade look like? Because for Darnold, you have to give up a minimum of a 2 and a big piece, or a 1 and a smaller piece. No. Baker's not going to be part of it. Baker's not going to be part of it because the Jets won't want to take him. If they're tanking for Trevor, they're tanking for Trevor. They're not taking for Trevor and Baker Mayfield.
But Baker could be a trade asset in the offseason.
No, you're not going to acquire a player just to trade them in the offseason. That's not how this works, especially a player who's on the downside of what people expect from him. That he's not a valuable trade asset at that point.
But it's in the, what are the Browns going to get in this draft? They're not worse. They're not bad enough to get Trevor or Justin. They're not. I don't even think they're bad enough to get Trey Lance. They're not bad enough to get Derek King. There's nobody else after those 4. Like, who are you going to trust in this draft? There's nobody. You might as well.
But why does it have to be in the draft? And plus, why does it have to be in the draft? Why can't it be somebody else? Why can't it be?
Who are you getting? Derek Carr?
Jameis Winston?
Oh, come on, get real. Would you rather have Sam Darnold or Jameis Winston?
Jameis Winston. So you can't just point it like that. You have to put it as Sam Darnold while also giving up major pieces, or Jameis Winston for only paying him a small salary.
No, because Drew Brees is gone. Drew Brees is retired after this year. Jameis Winston is going to be their future starting quarterback.
That's not necessarily the case. I believe Taysom Hill has a legitimate shot at taking that spot.
No. He is a utility player, and he'll continue to be that. He is nothing more than that. He doesn't make...
Unless the Saints are lying to him and to the public, I highly doubt that's the case.
It'll be a quarterback competition next offseason, but I don't think he's going to be a real problem for Jameis. I'd rather have Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has so much more potential. He's still super young. He's still under contract for 2 more years.
I agree with you, but are they going to put together a package that will benefit them? Don't forget, you're asking the Jets to trade their quarterback.
They have traded everybody
in the AFC. I understand that. But do they want to face Sam Darnold in the AFC?
They face him once every 4 years.
Possibly.
Oh, there's no way the Jets and the Browns are going to face more than once every 4 years. There's no way. The Browns
Well,
have
first it's
improved.
once every 3 years, so get that correct.
Whatever.
But also, no. To me, if I'm the Cleveland Browns, you have to truly evaluate whether what the asking price is. Because if I'm Joe Douglas, if it's the Browns, I want a first round pick. I don't want any of your pieces.
There's no other team that Sam Darnold is going to go to. They're going to have to offload him in this offseason anyway. You might as well acquire more draft capital going into the offseason, because if you can go
so put the pressure on the Jets. The pressure against the Jets is time.
But the Browns can win now if they get the right guy. Sam Darnold can get them there this season.
They cannot win this season.
You get Sam Darnold, I think they can do it.
No. There's no way they can. They're not, even with Sam Darnold, they're not going to beat Buffalo. They're not going to beat Pittsburgh.
Buffalo has proven to be beatable. They lost the last 2 games.
Yes, they did, to the Kansas City Chiefs
and the Tennessee Titans.
Right. You're not going to beat Tennessee if you're Cleveland. Just going to tell you that right now. They have other holes they need to fix. That the second level of the Cleveland Browns defense needs a whole hell of a lot of work, and the back end of that defense needs work. They need to.
Their defense isn't as much of an issue as Baker is. Baker is hurting because their offense could be putting up so many points. If their offense is able to put up points, it takes a lot of pressure off the defense.
I understand that. But the fact remains is that if you're identifying Baker Mayfield as the number one priority for this team to offload, and I'm saying that that's not their priority. Their priority needs to fix the defense. They need to fix other spots, and Baker Mayfield has the requisite talent to become what he was projected to be at some point in time. They don't have to make the trade right now for a player like Sam Darnold. They don't have to make a knee-jerk reaction move, because
how is it knee-jerk? It's been 5-6 weeks,
and they're 4-2.
But they're not trending in the right direction. And Baker has not played well at all this season, at all.
They're 4-2. He had to have played well in certain spots.
Their rushing game is amazing. You have Odell grabbing the ball and driving down the field. You have Jarvis Landry throwing touchdowns. Like, Jarvis Landry is a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield.
What I'm telling you right now is that for the Cleveland Browns, this is not their top priority.
It needs to be.
I don't believe it does.
Position. Quarterback's the number one position.
I understand that. But they have to fill out these other holes. And again, they're at 4-2. I don't know if this is truly the thing they need to focus on, especially since if you just wait till the offseason, then you have the leverage when you're trading for a player like Sam Darnold. Again, because time is a factor for Joe Douglas and the New York Jets organization, because they want those draft picks. They want that capital.
There's going to be more teams that try to pursue Sam Darnold. Go get him while you can, while no one else is trying to go after him.
The only other competition that they have for Sam Darnold would be Chicago.
And also, what does it matter if the Cleveland Browns have to give up multiple draft picks to go get a franchise quarterback? What does that matter? Who cares? They already have most of the pieces there. They need to fill a couple holes, which they can do in free agency. They have plenty of cap space to make all these moves. Just go trade for Sam Darnold. Don't get somebody that has potential in the draft when there is a guarantee that Sam Darnold is going to do much, much better than Baker Mayfield.
I don't see the trade happening. I really don't. And I think time will tell, but time's going to prove me right that they're not going to make a trade for Sam Darnold at the trade deadline.
If Baker continues to trend in the wrong direction, they're either going to have to rely on Case Keenum or they're going to have to make that trade for Sam Darnold.
I mean, like I said, don't discount Case Keenum. We saw what he was able to do in Minnesota. He made a playoff run there.
And then he went to Denver and was terrible.
You're talking about the Denver Broncos.
It could have just been by accident. Even Kirk Cousins had success at one point or another in Minneapolis. I mean, these things happen. I just It's
The
going
fact
to
remains that yes, Baker Mayfield is an issue, but he is not going to be moved, and they are not going to acquire another quarterback this year. I can absolutely guarantee it. I would be willing to put my life savings on the line to say they are not acquiring a starting caliber quarterback before the trade deadline this year.
I mean, this offseason, the Browns tried acquiring Cam Newton. They were the only other team besides New England that tried to go get Cam Newton.
Right,
Maybe
as
they
a
should have.
backup. That's what they offered him, a
Maybe they
backup
should.
role.
Maybe if they offered him more money and got him into camp, he would have shown that he's a much better quarterback than Baker
If they
Mayfield.
offered him a chance to start, a QB competition is all he asked for. But they said, no, we want you as a backup. If they offered the QB competition, and this goes back to what I talked about weeks ago, is why are teams so afraid of coming up with a quarterback competition for their quote unquote franchise quarterback? Because if he is really the guy, if that's really the guy that you want leading your team, he's going to prove it in that QB competition. But because these teams are so afraid of the quarterback's ego being tampered with, they don't want to bring relative competition in to possibly mess with their game. And I think that's an absolute load of bullshit.
Yeah, I mean the Browns, they're not trending in the right direction. They have week 9 is their bye. Week 9 is their bye. All right. If Baker loses the next 2 weeks, things are going to change in week 10.
Week 9 is after the trade deadline, just so we're clear.
When's the trade deadline? Usually it's early November.
It's November 3rd. It's election day.
Man.
Tuesday, November 3rd. Don't forget to vote.
Oh my god. That week is going to be absolutely
It's going to be absolutely absurd. Just brace yourselves for the week of November 2nd. Just hold on tight. It's going to be a bumpy ride. All right. Let's break away from the Cleveland Browns always being in the toilet bowl. Let's go to another team that just confuses the absolutely hell out of me. Brandon McManus and the Denver Broncos. Yes, I said that correctly. Brandon McManus and the Denver Broncos found a way to get past the Bill Belichick, Cam Newton-led Patriots squad after not playing for 6 years? No, 2 weeks. After everything that went on with the COVID positive tests and not being able to practice in the facility or even going to the facility and meeting on Skype and yada, 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 whatever. It looked, the Patriots looked absolutely abysmal on offense. Their defense looked great. They were given very bad field position almost every single time out on the field. They held up staunchly. And the reason I say Brandon McManus in the Denver Broncos is because they scored not 1, not 2, not 3, but 6 field goals to beat the Patriots. That's right. They scored 18 points and beat the Patriots, who only scored 12.
Man, that is cringy to hear. That is so cringy.
It's so bad. Now, you have a specific question lined up. I'm going to change it here. Is this loss more on Cam Newton or on Josh McDaniels?
You know how I feel about Josh McDaniels.
I understand that,
you're
but
trying to
taking into everything that you've seen, taking into account everything you witnessed and you've been able to digest, Cam Newton did not look good, and he said so himself. I'm going to take him at his own word and say he looked absolutely abysmal, right? Was this just Cam playing terribly, or was this actually Josh McDaniels and his game plan, or lack thereof?
It's a mixture of both, and I think a lot of it has to do with the layoff and the inability to practice in person. When you can't do too much when you're sitting in a Zoom meeting and you're breaking down film that can only get you so far. You need to then take what you've learned on tape and then produce it on the field. And that includes your scout team replicating the offense and the defense. And that includes your coaches figuring out on the spot during practice all right, this play isn't working. Let's throw in this play. Let's see how this works against this look. They weren't unable to do any of that. Cam Newton was sick, was tested positive with COVID, and then came back from it, and maybe had one on-field practice in between testing positive and then playing the real game.
Just one.
So, taking all that into consideration, I think it's one of those fluke situations where the Patriots were just caught in a bad situation where they're unable to do much with what they're given. And I think we can't overlook the lack of receivers that Cam has to play with. And,
ding, ding, ding.
But that's not the entire thing, because this should have been a team. The Denver Broncos are a beatable team, and I don't care what offensive linemen the Patriots have to work with, what receivers they have to work with, what running backs. I don't care. It should have worked out. I think there was a complete breakdown with communication with Josh McDaniels. I think his play calling was horrible. I think that he is too conservative with the playbook. He always tries to hold on to some special plays for the playoffs that nobody has seen. And I wish he was more like Eric Bieniemy, where he doesn't care. He'll just draw up a new play because that's how creative he is. I don't see that with Josh. I don't see that ability to come up with something new on the spot. And he doesn't trust the team, let alone Cam, enough to put a new play on the field without testing it out first. So Josh has got to learn to trust Cam Newton more, trust this offense more, and also open up the playbook. Don't be scared to put yourself. The Patriots are always trying to mitigate risk, mitigate turnovers, and that hurts them when they're trying to score big plays, because there's only so much you can work with that's a safe play. You're not so. It's frustrating because
I understand the frustration.
There's wrongdoing on both sides. It's easier for Cam to correct his. It's a mentality thing with Josh McDaniels.
It's not just a mentality thing with Josh McDaniels. The requisite talent that the New England Patriots have outside of the backfield is absolutely abysmal. When you take a look at this wide receiving core and this tight end group, you look at yourself and say, what the absolute F is New England doing at these positions? N'Keal Harry, who, again, I will say I've never been high on and I did not like coming out of the draft, is your number one wide receiver. He can't run a route correctly, and he struggles to get open. He can't beat anybody with his speed, and he can't create separation at the top of his routes. Julian Edelman looks like he's a 90-year-old man knees and can't move very well. And who else do you have? Damiere Byrd looks fine, but he's a wide receiver 3. I mean, he's done his job up to this point, but he's not a game breaker. He's not somebody you have to game plan for. There is nobody outside the numbers or on the line of scrimmage that you have to look at New England and say, that's a guy that can beat us offensively. There is no Rob Gronkowski. There is no Randy Moss. There is no Aaron Hernandez. There is nobody that can break a defensive game plan like they used to have. And that is where they're struggling right now. And the absolute lack of utilization from the tight end position has absolutely caused me to pull my hair out and go insane, which is why I wear a hat every single week. Because the fact remains that Ryan Izzo is the starting tight end for the New England Patriots. When they drafted 2 tight ends coming out of college, they've gotten a total of 0 targets up until this point. Dalton Keene, coming out of Virginia Tech, hasn't even seen the field. He's been healthy scratched every single week that he's been active on the roster. On top of that, Devin Asiasi gets blocking assignments as a pass-catching tight end. I don't understand what they are trying to do offensively. And then on top of this whole issue, the offensive line has been reshuffled 4 different times.
Each game.
They got away from the running game. They got away from the things that worked. And that's what boggles my mind the most. Josh McDaniels, Bill Belichick, they saw that the running game was working, and then they said to themselves, we're good. We don't actually want to win this game. I don't understand that mentality, because the fact remains that you have Damian Harris Rex Burkhead and James White, who are really good running backs and can rotate throughout the backfield and continuously apply pressure to this defensive line. Instead, they kept dropping back. They kept putting the ball in Cam Newton's hands, and his or his lack of ability to get past the defensive line because they were up in his face every single play was a major issue. I think that there is a whole head to toe undressing that New England needs to do for themselves and say, these guys just ain't it. These guys need to be added more into the game plan. And Josh McDaniels, you need to figure your shit out or you're going to be on your ass. I really don't know where else to go, but New England they are not the same team. They are not the team that I saw in the first couple of weeks or even before the whole COVID situation. I don't know who this team is, and I'm a little scared to see them throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah. I mean, the Patriots have had bad break after bad break, but that's no excuse for a Bill Belichick-led team. It's always next man up, and everybody's got to be ready, and that's on the coaches. That's on Bill, that's on Josh, that's on Gerard, that's on all of them. They all have to make sure their guys are ready to go. And you see a guy like Philip Lindsay, who's coming back from injury, turf toe. He's been the backup all season, and then he explodes for a 100-yard game against this defense. And it's not all on the offense. The defense has also got to help up, step up. I think that they have not been doing their job, and I know there's weapons that are missing that have opted out, and the weapons that Bill brought in this offseason, he piled on to the safeties and didn't build anywhere else. And the team is really suffering. Bill is the last 2 years he tried experimenting with no tight ends. How did that work out? Now he's experimenting with no linebackers or no tight ends again. He's
no big defensive linemen.
Yeah, all these experiments that Bill is trying to that Bill has going on, they're just not working out. He is still, I know there's people questioning him, mainly the freaking 98.5 the Sports Hub calling out Bill Belichick, wanting him to get fired, which is the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life.
Don't worry, those guys will get fired before Bill does.
I would expect that from WEEI, but not the Sports Hub. Anyway, Bill Belichick is still great at what he does, and I think he has been coaching at a higher level than he has in his coaching career. What I've seen from him has been absolutely amazing, but it seems like every season there's these 1 or 2 games where it seems like he just goes dumb. The entire team goes dumb. And it all falls on Bill at the end of the day. He's got to fix this team. And
he takes the blame. He does not run away from it either.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
It's not like, you're saying something that hasn't been said already. But the fact remains that New England has a whole hell of a lot of holes. And in my opinion, as much as I would love them to go and correct these holes, I believe that this just isn't the year for them. I don't think that they're going to be able to truly compete unless they unless they sell out. And even then, I don't want that to happen. So,
I mean, if you sell out,
are they going to turn this?
You run the risk of losing Cam. Cam's an unrestricted free agent.
He absolutely is. But it'll be interesting to see how this goes forward. I don't believe the Patriots will be active at the trade deadline. They may sign a couple free agents to help them maybe along the defensive line. But if you're a Patriots fan listening to this, just hold on, because again, the bumpy ride we talked about in November is going to continue for the Patriots the rest of the way, especially with the schedule that they have coming up. It's going to be one hell of a season for us. And don't worry, things will start to get better, because the Patriots do own the majority of, I think they have the highest or the second highest cap space going into next season.
They have the highest.
The highest.
By
so
far.
It'll be very interesting. Yeah. Over 100 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's well over 100 million with all the opt-outs this year, yeah.
Right. So you can guarantee that, if we go through this for 1 year, we're going to be able to retool. We're going to be able, I don't want to, as much as I would love a player like Julio Jones on the New England Patriots, he'd be a game breaker, one of those guys that can really help out our offense. I just don't believe that it's going to come to fruition, and nor do I think it should, because I believe we're in this for the long game. We're not in it for the short term. All right. One more game that we have highlighted here that we want to talk to before we end the show for this week was the Aaron Rodgers-led Packers that jumped out to an early lead on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It looked like it was going to be over before it started, and then all of a sudden the Buccaneers defense swallowed Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones whole, let them spit them out as just a couple of bones, and then the Buccaneers led and even had their backups come in the fourth quarter. Do you believe that this was just a fluke, or are the Packers truly not what we thought they were as an undefeated team coming into this week?
I think this game in particular goes more to how good Todd Bowles is at dissecting an offense and getting his team ready, his defense ready to play. I think that this team, the Packers offense in particular, will get stronger. This was Devontae Adams' first game back in a long while. Allen Lazard is out, and then you're relying on Marquez Valdes-Scantling as your number 2. This team and this pass rush was just too much for Aaron Rodgers and this offensive line to handle, and so they struggled. And it's something that they can come back from. Aaron Rodgers is playing, I think, better than he has in his entire career this season with the weapons he has. Aaron Jones didn't have a great game. It was just a great game by Todd Bowles in this defense that Tampa Bay has. So I think it's more of a fluke. I believe in the Packers to get back to their winning ways and be as dominant as they were in the first 4 weeks and continue that throughout the rest of the season.
I think that they are somewhere in between. This is obviously, probably the bottom point of their season as far as output is concerned. But I don't believe they're going to be as riding as high as they were being an undefeated team coming into this game. They got their first real test this week against a true Super Bowl contender, and they got eaten and spit out. Like I said, I mean, there's just no two ways around it. They managed 10 points all day, and it was bad. It just looked terrible. Aaron Rodgers couldn't get a damn thing going. Devontae Adams was back, so he didn't even have that excuse to roll up on. I just, for me personally, I don't believe, the hype around the Packers, because for time and time again, I have seen them obliterate, mediocre teams, and, everybody praises Aaron Rodgers and the Packers for being, this insane juggernaut of a team. And then all of a sudden they face some staunch competition and they crumble like, packing paper or packing peanuts. I mean, it's just like that. And for me, I can't get past the fact that Aaron Rodgers has won 1 Super Bowl, and it wasn't even in the last decade. So I don't know if he is, everybody wants to talk about him as an MVP contender. I don't see it. This game specifically shows me that the exact reason why Patrick Mahomes and even Russell Wilson are far and away above Aaron Rodgers at this point in time.
I'm not going to get into MVP conversations just yet, but this Packers team, they're going to get better. Tampa Bay is a team on the rise. This is a team that's figuring it out. In the first couple of weeks, the defense was slow. As all defenses have been this season without a preseason, it's taken them some time. And now we're seeing, I mean, this is the number 3 ranked defense in the league, Tampa Bay.
But the Packers also gave up over 100 yards to Ronald Jones on the ground, on top of Tom Brady dissecting them through the air.
This Packers defense has always struggled with the run game. That's always been a problem with them, and they have talent on the defense. I think what happened was when Jamel Dean had that first interception that took back for for a touchdown and brought the game within 3. I think then the entire Packers team just started to crumble. They felt the momentum shift completely, and Tampa Bay never gave it back. I mean, Tampa Bay is a great team. They had all their weapons besides Leonard Fournette, which is still an all-star team. You know, that you can't think of Tampa Bay as just an average team. They have too many weapons to be considered anything less than elite. And I think we're finally getting a taste of what Tampa Bay can do.
Yeah, again, this game told me more about the Packers than it told me about Tampa Bay. I knew Tampa Bay was good. I don't think the Packers were as good as they were, going into this game. And for me, it was just something that confirmed my suspicion that they were imposters. Um, so as far as I'm concerned, they're still title contenders. They're still going to be in it in the playoffs, but and I believe they'll win their division handily. But they do have some tough competition with the Bears, and they have some tough competition in the NFC as a whole. So it'll be interesting to see how the Packers rebound from this, how they answer, and can Marquez Valdez-Scantling actually do something, or is he just another bust on the as a wide receiver? And it goes back to their front office as well, spending a first-round draft pick on the future quarterback of the franchise rather than getting Aaron Rodgers any help whatsoever. So
Could have gotten
it's
that man
definitely
Chase Claypool.
yeah. I mean, for real. Um, it just remains to be seen that the Packers are as good as everybody thought they were. So, all right, I think that'll do it for this week's episode. I appreciate everybody who took the time to listen to it up until this point. We greatly appreciate any time that you give to us listening. Make sure to check us out if you're listening to the podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We have a lot of different viewers. That we have way more viewers than people that are subscribed, so that's telling me that you guys aren't subscribing. So what I need you to do, hit that red subscription button, ring the notification bell. That way you get notified every time we upload, because right now things might end up changing based on certain schedules, and like we talked about in the beginning of November, things may have to be moved around. You don't want to miss anything that we have to put out there, any of the clips that we're going to start putting out there, everything like that. So make sure you hit the subscription notification and then ring the bell, and we will catch you next week. Take care.